In this video, you're going to learn how to take the square root of a number with and without a calculator. You are also going to be able to estimate the square root of a non-perfect square. So first we are going to do square roots without a calculator. Okay, so square roots basically undo squaring. They're the opposite. So the definition is a number which when multiplied by itself results in a specific quantity. Okay, that quantity is what you're taking the root of. You're trying to figure out what is that number that multiplies to get that quantity. So squaring a number and square rooting a number, those are inverses. So just like multiplication and division are inverses, squaring and square rooting are inverses. So again, you're undoing the fact that a number has been squared. So take the square root of 25. We're thinking, well, what number times itself gives me this 25? So you should know from our last lesson that 5 times 5 is 25. But also, negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So there are always two roots, the positive and the negative root. So you can list them out like this, or oftentimes you'll see positive, negative 5, and we'll include both answers in one spot like that. So either way will work. So when we take the square root of 64, we know both 8 and negative 8 squared will give us 64. Okay, so we have a positive and a negative root. Can we take the square root of a negative number? Can we think of a number times itself that will give me a negative number? And the answer is no, it's impossible. Okay, because any number times itself, whether it's positive or negative, is going to be positive. So there's no way I can get a negative number here. So I can't take the root of a negative number. Okay, 5 times 5 is positive 25. Negative 5 times negative 5 is still positive 25. So there's no way I can get this the root of this negative 25. So if you type that into your calculator later when we get to the calculator section, it will actually say error. Okay, there is no answer there. So I would like you to now pause the video and mentally do the square roots of these 4 problems. So the square root of 81 is positive and negative 9. Square root of 16 is positive and negative 4. Square root of 121 is positive negative 11. Square root of 49 is positive and negative 7. So the other thing we need to be able to do without a calculator is estimate the square root. So 27 we know is not a perfect square. So now it's good to be able to estimate, well, if I were to take the square root of this, I don't have a calculator, what 2 numbers is it going to fall between? So what 2 consecutive numbers, meaning 2 numbers that are right next to each other? So like 8 and 9, 9 and 10. Okay, so 2 consecutive numbers will this square root fall between? So even though 27 is not a perfect square, we still need to know what our perfect squares are. So if I can make a list quickly in my head, which we practiced in the last video, I can stop right here because I can see right now that 27 falls between 25 and 36. It falls between these 2 perfect squares, which means the root of 27 is also going to fall between the root of those perfect squares, so between 5 and 6. So the square root of 27 falls between 5 and 6, somewhere in the middle, so 5 point something. Okay, so I want you to now take a second and pause the video and figure out the square root of 60, 40, and 78 using your perfect squares. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my list of perfect squares here. 60, I can see, is going to fall between 49 and 64, which means the square root of 60 is going to fall between 7 and 8. So 7 point something. Okay, I could probably guess 60 is closer to 64, so I could probably guess maybe like 7.8, sorry. But really, we know it's between 7 and 8, which is the main part that you need to be able to do. So 40, if I'm looking at my list of perfect squares, is between 36 and 49, which means this square root is going to fall between 6 and 7. The square root of 78 falls between 64 and 81, which means the square root here is going to fall between 8 and 9. Okay, so we can see the faster you can make this list, the easier estimating square roots will become. So now we're going to do square roots with our calculator. Okay, so when you're taking the square root, oftentimes you're going to get a decimal. I will always tell you what to round to. So in this video, I'm going to have you round to the 10th. So we got our calculator handy. So in the squaring video, whenever we were squaring a number, remember we used this x squared key. If we notice right above this key in blue, we can see our square root symbol. That's what we're going to be using to take the square root on our calculator. So to get to any of the blue writing on your calculator, we have to hit this blue second key. So then when I hit this x squared key, it's actually giving me the square root key. So we can see in our screen here we have the square root. So now I type in, I want to take the square root of 478, hit enter, and we can see we get 21.86, but the 10th place is this first decimal place. So that means we need to look at our hundredths place, and this is going to tell us whether we're going to leave this as an 8 or we're going to round it up. If this hundredths place is a 5 or higher, that tells us we need to round. So we actually have 21.9, and we have positive or negative 21.9. Okay. So let's do one more together. So we're going to take the square root of 614, rounding to the 10th again. So there's two different ways we could do this. Remember, I can use my arrow key and I can go up and highlight my last problem to hit enter and then just go back and change my number. Or we can just retype it in again. I'm going to take the second button, hit that square root key, and type in 614. Okay, either way, I'm going to get the same answer, and now I need to round. So I'm looking at that second decimal place. It is above a 5, which means I need to round my tens place up to get 24.8, and again I have a positive or negative 24.8. At this point in time, I want you to pause the video to do these example problems in your notes. Okay, so make sure you are always telling me both roots. You always have a positive and a negative root. Again, if I give you a decimal problem, a decimal answer, so that's why I said round to the 10th if I give you a decimal, or write as a fraction. So I give you 2 fraction problems, you should have fraction answers. Still have 2 roots though. You still have a positive and a negative root.